be lost if we close our coal industry. It's all about them and their vanity project. Well, it's no secret there's a major crisis when it comes to ambulance wait times in Victoria, with people literally dying waiting for assistance. People are dying waiting for someone to pick up the 000 calls. We've covered this story and it is absolutely appalling. And we're hearing today that Victoria Police is also facing a massive shortage, with 1,500 frontline officers needed. A new report shows almost 2/3 of sergeants surveyed said it was common for officers to not make it out to jobs, and it's commonplace for police to take longer than an hour to attend priority one jobs, such as armed robberies, car accidents and home invasions. Joining me now is the Victorian Shadow Minister for Police and Emergency Services, Brad Batten. Brad, the staff allocation model was brought in 6 years ago. So how have we ended up in a position where we're that short on the officers needed to do the job?
Because, Rita, we've seen again from this government, it's more about spin than it is actually delivery. The SAM allocation model is not a police association model. It's a model brought in by government to, in their words, stop the bust and boom of the Victoria Police Services, to ensure that the delivery of new police officers in the right locations can be allocated using a model that takes into consideration crime, takes into consideration many things. Probably the most disappointing thing about this story today was the Andrews Labor government, particularly Daniel Andrews, who's come out today and said, oh, the model might be incorrect during COVID. Are you kidding me? People in Victoria are not going to believe that a model brought in place to allocate Victoria Police across the state is faulty because of COVID. They can blame COVID on a lot, but to blame it on staff allocation across our states and the wait times while people are waiting for a Victorian police officer, that is just a new low even for Daniel Andrews.
Now, we've seen South Australia abandon vaccine mandates for the police force. Is this something that Victoria will follow? Is this something that the coalition will advocate for? Because I don't know how many officers aren't doing their jobs because of these mandates, but there must be a few.
Yeah, we've had discussions with the Police Association, and I've spoken to Wayne Gatt on this specific issue. And the one thing I can say is there's not a lot of police who ended up stepping down from the Victoria Police Force. And I think from memory, it was under 10 was the total in relation to the mandates. However, what we have continued to say is the biggest problem you've got with numbers shortages in Victoria Police at the moment, in health, in education, it doesn't matter what government department, is the fact that any person who's not sick is staying home because of the close contacts within their family. What we need to change, take out the mandates. We're saying get rid of the mandates altogether, except if you're in health or aged care. We're on record for that. But the most important thing at the moment is if you've got someone in your household as a close contact who gets COVID, like Matthew Guy had this last week where he couldn't come back into work because his son had COVID, and at no stage was Matthew Guy sick. That is happening across our entire emergency services. When you've got up to 2,000 nurses in furlough, let me assure every person in the community, most of them, a high majority, are not because they've got COVID. It's because they're a close contact. So let's change those rules. Yep. Let's make sure we can get people back. And that means our health system can be better, 000. And as you said before, the Victoria Police as well, we can have people on the beat protecting us when we need them.
Now, Victoria Police is also in the midst of a brand management exercise, with Police Command eager to repair the damage caused by 2 years of enforcing some very harsh COVID rules. Brad, do you believe that the force's standing in the community has suffered? We've seen some selective policing practices. We've seen things like enforcing playground bans on children, cracking down on anti-lockdown protesters. And, of course, there's been the recent scandals such as Lawyer X and Sluggate.
Yeah, I think the Victoria Police have had a tough time over the last few years, and COVID has particularly impacted that. Victoria police officers, and as you may be aware, Rita, I'm a former police officer, they go to work every day to protect the community, and they do also not just represent the community, they're representatives of the community, so they're not all perfect. Now, in saying that, we need to make sure that we have the respect for Victoria Police. And the government over the last 2 years has used them as a pawn within the COVID game, where they've actually done things like closed down parks where kids could go to, and want police to enforce these ridiculous rules. Ones that there was never any evidence in relation to the health crisis on how it was passed on through a park. And Daniel Andrews later admitted it was actually to stop parents having a sip of wine at the park rather than actually the kids in the playground. But yet they wanted the Victoria Police to go out there and stop kids at skate parks. That's what's created the issues within the Victoria Police. And I don't care if it's Shane Patton, whoever's the Chief Commissioner, we need to get that respect back because it's a huge part of keeping our communities together.
Oh, absolutely. I feel terrible for the officers working at the coalface because it's often command who force them to enforce these crazy rules. I mean, really, having children not be allowed to be on playgrounds, that is just something Victoria Police should not be involved in. Now, Brad, we've got some late-breaking news tonight with the Herald Sun reporting a spin machine army of 154 communications and public relations staff has been jammed into major road and rail projects by the Dan Andrews government. Now, we know Dan Andrews' media team is enormous, but how much is this PR platoon costing the taxpayers?
Every time Daniel Andrews spends money on more spin, people have to realise that's money coming out of delivery of government services. Now, he'll talk about we've got all these amazing projects going and that's why we've got all these people out there telling everyone. If the projects are so good and people are seeing them, do you really need a media spin expert to remind us all that the level crossing removal program is going ahead? Because we should be able to see that by driving past it, driving through it and seeing the improvements. Daniel Andrews, every time he has put money into these projects, every time he increases the number of media staff in his office, that is money from the same pool of money coming from taxpayers. That means we can have one less 000 operator here in Victoria, one less nurse in our hospital, one less Victorian police officer on our beat. Daniel Andrews has to start to get not the messaging right, but the delivery right. And we're sick and tired of hearing about the amount of money he spends on Facebook, the amount of money he spends on social media, the amount of money they spend on media. And now we're seeing they're even hiding it in the contracts that they're giving out to mates of theirs to ensure that they've got a media spin campaign more than they have an actual delivery of our services. We've seen cost blowouts of things like the Westgate Tunnel, but $24 billion in this state in cost blowouts. And all we've seen now is a government is investing, ensuring they've got the right spin team to make that $24 billion sound like it was an extra investment, rather than what most people know what it is, incompetence from this government who can't manage money.
Well, we know the projects are running dramatically over budget. I mean, there's no hiding that. And Victoria does have the biggest state debt in the country by some margin. So these are issues that we're going to be talking about in the months to come. Brad Batten, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Joining me now to give us the honest facts